My dad forced me to share a room with my entitled half-sister who ruined my clothes, played the victim, and turned my family against me until her lies exploded. So I, 17, female, recently did something that everyone's really mad at me about, and I don't know what to think right now. I have been living with just my dad for the last couple of weeks because my mother had to go to Louisiana for a work assignment. My mom, 42, female, and my dad, 48, male, got married around the time they found out she was pregnant, and they have been together ever since. My mother had never been married before, and I was her first child. But my dad already had a daughter from his previous relationship. My half-sister, let's call her Dana, 22, female, is pretty annoying and entitled, and we have never really gotten along. My dad never married her mother. They had only been together for about a year when her mother found out she was pregnant. They had already been thinking about breaking up, but when the pregnancy was discovered, they tried to make things work. Unfortunately, that relationship did not last long, and they broke up shortly after Dana was born. They worked out a co-parenting agreement, and Dana would spend weeks traveling between her parents' houses. About 3 years after Dana was born, my dad met my mother at a conference and asked her out. They started dating, and after 2 years they got married and had me. My father continued to raise Dana, and my mother didn't have a problem with that. Growing up, Dana and I were never close. I remember my father trying his very best to get us to be friends, but neither of us really took to each other. We were far, very far, from being close half-sisters or even friends. That's just how it was when we were kids. Gradually, even my dad realized we weren't interested in being friends with each other, so he stopped trying. Still, I had a great relationship with my dad and was pretty close to him whenever Dana wasn't around. I would have a great time being at home with my parents. I just didn't like it whenever she came over, because then she would try to hog all the limelight. It was understandable. My dad only saw her on Fridays and weekends, so he naturally gave her a little more attention during the short time she was with us. I know she would never admit it, but there was definitely some degree of sibling rivalry. My father, however, was a good dad to me, and I have to give credit where it's due. As we grew older, I started caring less about outdoing Dana or competing with her, but I don't think she ever got over that phase. Even after she got into college, she didn't stop her silly, childish behavior. She would try to put me down for attention. She would brag about the fabulous college she got into, even though I was literally just 13 at the time and wasn't even thinking about colleges yet. She would brag about how smart she was, even though I was actually better than her academically at her age. She would also brag about how much fun she was having at college every time she came home for the holidays. I thought it was really weird and unnecessary, and sometimes I would make fun of her right to her face, which really annoyed her. We would end up in subtle, passive-aggressive catfights. All of that came to an end a couple of years ago, though, after her mom passed away. It was a week before she graduated when we got the news that Dana's mother had died suddenly from a heart attack. It was a really sad event because she wasn't even 50 yet and was still quite young. Unfortunately, she had a very stressful lifestyle, and the doctor said she had been repeatedly told to get regular checkups, but she never did anything to change. It was a huge shock for the family because nobody even knew she had been suffering for so long. Apparently, she had been having heart problems for years but hadn't told anybody. This shook Dana up badly. After the funeral, something changed, and unfortunately, not for the better. Due to the shock of the event, Dana started binge eating and developed an eating disorder. At first, it was barely noticeable, but over time, we started seeing the signs. She had been living with us at the time, and it was actually me who told my father I was concerned about her. And I wasn't mocking her, I was genuinely worried because she was out of control. So my dad and I did a lot of research, and we decided it was time for him to talk to her about therapy. She wasn't happy about it at all. Dana blamed me, saying this was just a ploy for me to get attention and that I only wanted to label her as crazy. I honestly wish that had been the case because then at least she would have been safe from an eating disorder, but unfortunately, that wasn't the truth. I really wanted to help her. After a lot of discussion, rebellion, and bargaining, Dana finally agreed to get help because she had ballooned up to an enormous size, and it was absolutely not healthy. It took several months, but we started seeing improvement. She had already graduated by then and had been sitting at home because she was depressed, understandably so. But almost a year after her mother's passing, Dana decided she was going to start looking for a job. She found one within a couple of weeks. Despite my personal differences with her, she was actually a pretty good student and had great grades, so she got hired quickly. Within a few months, she was out of the house. That was literally just half a year ago, and I expected her to stay in her own apartment after that. But for some reason, she decided she didn't want to live on her own anymore and wanted to move back in. I had no idea why she thought that was a good idea, especially since she could afford to live on her own. But she's unpredictable, and my dad had started coddling her ever since her mother passed away, so he said yes without thinking twice. Unfortunately, my parents and I had also moved out of our old house a couple of weeks earlier and into a new house that we had bought because we didn't want to pay rent anymore and wanted something of our own. We hadn't even fully finished unpacking yet when my mother got a huge work opportunity in Louisiana, so she had to leave within the first week. My dad and I did all the unpacking ourselves. Our new house has 4 bedrooms. One was supposed to be mine, one for my parents, and the other 2 were meant to be for guests. One of the guest rooms was obviously intended for Dana, and the other one was for other people. It's a pretty spacious house, but the problem is that we have been using one of the guest rooms as a makeshift storage room right now, so it's uninhabitable. The other empty room doesn't even have a bed yet. Our previous house was already pre-furnished before we moved in, so we didn't have to buy a lot of things. This one, however, doesn't come with furniture, and my parents have already spent a lot of money, so buying a bed right now and furnishing 2 rooms that would probably not even be used for a long time didn't seem necessary. We just left that room empty, since we didn't know Dana would randomly decide to move back in one day. But yeah, that happened 2 weeks ago. My father just told me that she would be moving in with us and that I was expected to share my room with her because the other 2 rooms were uninhabitable. I was outraged. I'm a 17-year-old. I need my own privacy. I also didn't want to share my room with Dana because I found her annoying and I never liked her, and never would. I fought with my father a lot and even tried to get my mother to intervene, but she just told me she was busy with work and that this was really petty of me. Apparently, the poor girl had just recently lost her mother and was trying to get back on her feet, so I should be there for her instead of rejecting her. My dad had a similar opinion and said it was my moral duty to make Dana feel as welcome as possible instead of acting like a brat. I personally didn't think I was acting like a brat at all. I honestly felt like this was Dana being entitled. I mean, honestly, she was working and earning her own money, so there was no reason she couldn't live on her own, at least until the other room was furnished. Or maybe she could just buy the bed herself and move into the other room, but apparently she just wanted to move back here because she was lonely and was also saving up to quit her job and start something of her own, a small business for all I know. I even suggested that she sleep on the couch or something, but she wasn't on board with it because she said it would hurt her back, and she already had a lot of issues with her back from when she was struggling with her weight. So that was not happening. I was told that I would have to share my room with Dana, and there was no way out of it. The saddest part? I had to sleep on the floor in my own room, and I could tell that Dana was really enjoying this experience. She moved in 1.5 weeks ago, and it has been a nightmare for me ever since. Not only is she literally the most annoying person to live with, but she's also a total slob, and I can't deal with that. She is constantly talking to people on the phone as loudly as she can, and it's really disturbing when I'm trying to study, so I have to finish all my homework before she comes back home. I don't even get to rest when I come back from school because I only have a couple of hours before she returns. She also made a mess of my room pretty much on the day she moved in with me, and it was horrible. No matter how much I clean up, it's always a mess again the very next day. I complained about it to my dad after dinner one day last week, but he told me I just had to suck it up and deal with it because she was going through something, and as a family, we had to be there for her. And he was right. Maybe I have had my own problems, but at least my mother is still alive, and so is my dad, so I don't really know how she feels. Besides, she's still recovering from an eating disorder, and that couldn't have been easy, so I was willing to cut her some slack and give her the benefit of the doubt. However, 3 days ago, she really crossed a line, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I snapped. 3 days ago, I left really early in the morning to go to a friend's house and spent almost the entire day there. I came back home in the evening because it was Saturday and I didn't have school the next day, so I could do whatever I wanted. I was in a great mood until I came back to my room and saw all my clothes lying on the floor. It appeared that most of my outfits had been either stretched out or, even worse, torn. I was horrified. I couldn't even imagine why anybody would do this, until Dana came back into the room and told me that she could explain. Apparently, she had been trying on all my outfits because she needed something pretty to wear to a CO worker's wedding next week, and she couldn't find anything in her own belongings that still fit. She was smiling at me while she told me this and had a really smug look on her face, because she knew exactly what she was doing. She had known all along. She was just trying to mess with me. She knew that if her own clothes didn't fit her anymore, there was no way on earth that my clothes would fit her, because I am several sizes smaller than her. She knew that, but it didn't stop her from trying on all my clothes. because she knew it would pretty much ruin them, stretch them out or tear them, and they would become all loose and weird on me afterward. She had done this on purpose, and she wanted me to know, which is why she had laid it all out on the floor for me to see when I came back home. It was pretty diabolical. For the first couple of minutes, I didn't even have anything to say to her because I was just that horrified. She continued to smile at me while I stared down at the mess she had created. But then I lost my temper, and I did something I'm not very proud of. I walked right up to her and smacked her across the face. I had been stretched pretty thin already, and everybody had been testing my patience by forcing me to live with her and sleep on the floor of my own room, just because her mother had passed away, and she was shamelessly using that to her advantage. After I smacked her, there was no looking back. She had a significant size advantage over me, and soon enough we were in a full-blown brawl. I got a few good scratches in, and she pulled out some of my hair, but I was glad that I got to hit her, and even though I'm not very proud of it, she deserved it. My dad heard us fighting. It took him a while, but he was eventually able to break us up. I thought that he would at least ask us what happened, but he didn't even wait. He just started yelling at me about my behavior. He didn't bother to wait for an explanation and just assumed this was all my fault. He told me that I had been behaving like a spoiled brat ever since Dana moved in with us, and that he needed me to cut it out, otherwise he would have to kick me out and send me to live with my grandparents. He said I was being entitled, heartless, and petty by putting Dana through so much and tormenting her all the time. He was saying all the right things, but to the wrong person. I was so disappointed and hurt that I didn't even say anything to him. I just let him yell at me while Dana enjoyed the show. It was extremely disappointing because I had always firmly believed that my father loved the two of us equally and would never pick sides. But right now, Dana was using her trauma from her mother's passing and her eating disorder to play the victim, and she was shamelessly milking it just to get me in trouble. Let me just remind you, this is a 22-year-old woman with a job we are talking about, not some 15-year-old with unresolved issues. She knows exactly what she's doing, but I don't know why she's doing it. I was really hurt and upset. After my dad was done yelling at me, I grabbed my phone and stormed out of the house. Nobody tried to stop me because they knew I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I would be back in a couple of hours anyway, and they were right. I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I decided to take a walk in the park. I was fuming, and even walking wasn't helping me cool down. So in the heat of the moment, I opened social media and decided to make a post about my dad and Dana. As soon as I started typing, the words just flowed out because I was really upset about all of this. I told everybody in the post how my dad had been behaving, and how my mother also seemed to be on his side because they believed Dana was some long-suffering figure who deserved our sympathy. But the truth was that she was only using her mother's demise as a cover for her own terrible behavior, and it was disgusting. Yet it was exactly what she was doing. She was just so good at it that people found it hard to see that she was actually putting on an act to show how upset she was, so she could get away with anything she wanted. And for some reason, she was using our parents' sympathy for her to make my life a living nightmare. I don't know why she was doing it, but I did know that it was working, and I couldn't take it anymore because it was downright torture for me. After typing it all out, I posted it and then decided to walk it off. I must have been walking for about 2 hours, and my phone had switched off, so I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. When I was done walking, I started heading back home to face the music. I knew I was going to get yelled at for the post, but I didn't anticipate that my dad would threaten to kick me out. The second I walked into the house, my dad and Dana started screaming at me about where I had been and demanded an explanation for what I had just posted. I told him, as calmly as I could, that the post was exactly how I felt, and it was long overdue because the two of them had been very difficult to live with, and I couldn't do this anymore. I told my father that I was sick of living with Dana, because not only was she a terrible person, but she was also a huge slob, and I hated her from the bottom of my heart. At that point, Dana started crying crocodile tears, probably just to get me in more trouble, and it worked. My father started yelling at me like crazy and said that I owed her a huge apology, and it had to be a public one just like my post had been. He said he was ashamed of me and that he had expected so much better from me. When I told him that I was not going to apologize to anybody, he told me I could either apologize or get the heck out of his house. Apparently, he was not going to tolerate this kind of behavior, and I needed to realize there would be consequences to my actions, that I couldn't just get away with everything I wanted to do. It was even more infuriating because, once again, he was saying these things to the wrong person. Dana was the one who needed to hear it, so in a fit of rage I told him that the house didn't even belong to him, and that it was actually Mom's house, so he had no right to kick me out anyway. I wasn't supposed to say that. I had found out accidentally. In the first few days after we moved in, I was going through my mother's belongings trying to find something that actually belonged to me. I thought it must have gotten mixed up. While I was going through her stuff, I found the deed to our house, and it only had my mom's name on it. I thought that was pretty suspicious, but I never brought it up with anyone because I didn't think it was my business. As long as I was getting to live in the house, I didn't really care. I also figured they must have talked about it and discussed these things, so I had no need to poke my nose where it didn't belong, but it just slipped out while I was fighting with my dad. He seemed taken aback. He tried to deny it at first and said I was lying, but I told him to go check the deed for himself if he didn't believe me. It was under lock and key in his bedroom, and he could have checked it whenever he wanted, but he hadn't because he trusted my mother with the paperwork and it just didn't seem necessary at the time. When I said that, he rushed to the bedroom immediately. Even Dana was shocked, so she stopped crying, and surely enough, a couple of minutes later, my dad came out of the bedroom and he was all red in the face, because what I said turned out to be true. He asked me how long I had known, and I told him I had known about this from pretty much the day we moved in. After that, he went back into his room and abandoned his fight with me. Because of course, this was more important. Even Dana went back into our room. But I didn't feel comfortable going back into that room, so I decided to sleep on the couch. I didn't have any back problems, so I could sleep there pretty easily. It was still better than sleeping on the floor, but I didn't really get the chance to sleep. A couple of hours after I had revealed the big secret to my father, I received a call from my mother, and she put me on blast immediately. She told me that I had no right to spill something like that without first speaking to her about it. Apparently, I had ruined something pretty big. My mother told me that the house had actually been a gift from her parents, because she and my father had recently celebrated their wedding anniversary, and my grandpa wanted to do this for them. All the money that my parents had spent on buying the house actually went into their retirement fund. My mother had been planning to tell my father about all of this on their second honeymoon that they were about to take in a couple of months when she came back from her work assignment. She had been building up to the surprise for months now, and it was going to be huge, because she was even planning on paying for their vacation to the Greek islands from the money they had saved from the house. Unfortunately, I had ruined the surprise. And not only that, I had caused a huge fight between my parents because my dad believed that my mother should have just told him instead of trying to surprise him with this. So now she had to fly back home in the middle of a really busy week and try to fix her marriage because I opened my big mouth just because I was having some petty fight with my half-sister. She also said that she was really disappointed in me. And that was pretty much the last straw for me. It was an already sucky day, and it felt like everybody was against me at that point. It's been a couple of days since then, and nobody's speaking to me. I even took down the post, but that hasn't changed anything. I'm still being treated like a pariah in my own home. My dad doesn't even look at me anymore, and I haven't heard from my mother yet, but I know for a fact that she isn't happy about any of this, and I'll get to hear about it when she comes back to talk to my father. Until then, it's just going to be silent in this house, and I'll just have to deal with it, because I guess it might be my fault. I've been thinking about everything for a really long time now, since I have a lot of time on my hands to overthink, and I don't know. I just feel like I could have avoided a lot of this if I had dealt with things calmly instead of trying to get back at Dana. I don't regret the fact that I attacked her when I saw what she did to my clothes, even though it seems pretty insignificant now, but I do have some regrets about the post that I made, because I shouldn't have aired dirty laundry like that. That was unnecessary, and I guess I screwed up somehow. But also, after the way I had been treated for weeks, anybody in my position would have lost their mind and snapped. I don't even know if I should apologize at this point or not, or even if it will make a difference to the situation. But nevertheless, I ETA for making a post attacking my dad and half-sister because they were forcing me to share a room with her. Update 1. Thank you guys so much for all the supportive comments and messages. I'm really grateful for all of it, and yeah, that really helped me make sense of things. I'm doing a lot better mentally right now. I guess the fact that things have been sorted out with my parents also helps. It's been a week since I posted. A couple of days after my post, my mother returned, and we decided to have a family meeting and finally clear the air between us. Interestingly enough, that was done at a time when Dana was not at home. And even more curiously, it was my father who suggested that we do it when Dana was not around. So they took a day off work, waited for her to go to her job, and then we decided to talk. It was kind of uncomfortable for me, but I shared my feelings with them. Everything I said here, I told them. They actually seemed to understand, which I didn't think was possible. They told me that they could understand where I was coming from. Then my father told me that after the huge blow-up he had with me, he decided to talk to Dana about certain things, and realized that everything I had said was true. He had been a fool all along. Apparently, she had been laying it on thick and had been trying to manipulate him against me. After our fight, he didn't understand what was going on, but she kept making up stuff. After a certain point, even he knew that I was not capable of doing such things, and he could tell that something was weird. Once he figured out that she had been trying to play us all, he decided he could no longer trust his gut about this, and that he was going to talk to us in person. My parents had already sorted things out between them. They were okay with the deed, the retirement fund, and everything, so this was the only thing we actually had to discuss. After some deliberation, my parents decided that it would be for the best if we told Dana to leave, because what she had done was unacceptable. She had actually been milking her mother's demise for something so petty that it was distasteful. So to sum it up, Dana has been asked to leave. She threw a huge fit about it and accused me of trying to sabotage her future, which was interestingly exactly what she had been trying to do to me. So that was clearly projection. But I finally realized why she hated me so much. It was just because she could. She was just a terrible person who got off on other people's misery. Mystery solved. Update 2. So Dana has left, but my mother has stayed back for a couple of days more. She believes that we need to start family therapy. She's going to join in the online sessions, and we're all going to try and make this work. I have my fingers crossed, and I hope that this brings us all closer, because the last few months have been tough, and I just really want everything to go back to normal. Update 3. Hey, it's been almost a year since my last update, and I'm thrilled to inform you guys that I'm starting college in a couple of weeks. I got into the school of my choice, and we are all really happy. My mother finished up her assignment a couple of months ago and has been living with us ever since. It finally feels like a perfect family again. Dana has had no contact with us since she left. Thank God for that. Therapy has been going well, and I feel like everything has fallen into place. I couldn't be more grateful to the universe for it.